Rangrig.
Miktendu, lemendo. Mundo.
Aki?
Mundo.
Ni.
Chita corora.
Oh ja.
Las. Mundo. Chimutumu.
Okay, mal.
Dalis.
Gerne. I can
Do so.
Dix.
Last thing I go to Shara.
Okay, let's
Just
begin.
number tower.
Just delay everybody.
Then also on the Nelging to some Gijip Sopat and Churches on the Sopat. Not so Roshoni on you by Changoni in Gashikash, you're a million water. This Tapukil Loptatoni to so Yinji Las Opiker and Ramayata. The knee passes over she had not shoot the water cell check when a not you could pan motor chat and you could chit Sopan to Yore.
Gen Geshe Gyaltsen, who was one of the founders of Shide, he asked us to, or he asked Geshe-la to give a little introduction about Shide. I think have you been here before?
No, it's our first time.
Yeah, so in Geshe-la says it's a community of several Geshes from Tangu house in South India, from Drepung Monastery, and they founded Shide community for different purposes. So some of them are learning languages. They learn English or Chinese, and then they also, teach students, obviously like Dharma, but they also learn teach others Tibetan. They offer Tibetan language classes.
Last Tani Tangaron Yataran Reloshoni Gashiton Yoreta Gichilarambare. She not you Jaya Tangar to Gomban Gaya Tamatare, and it's on the Kajire.
And Geshe says he himself, is also from the south, from Drepung Monastery. He has graduated, he has got the Lharampa Geshe degree, the highest degree, it's kind of like a doctor of philosophy. And so he has, studied Buddhism quite extensively. And my name is Sonam Lhamo. I'm translating for him.
So, turning out to look in the Tendrichik, non be said that you couldn't easy theory, consent chocosonre, Tandil Ketan Zendrag, Natson Zendrati, Ligo Kopatan, Chuni Patri, Yena, Tari Lopti, Kinda, Tanda Sambani, Dumbaz, Partal, Lugopamato, Chagio Mari, the Lopsin the theory.
So the topic or the text that we are using is a text that has been taught by, and also compiled by the Dalai Lama himself, and there's an English version available, which I have an e-version of it, but there's a paperback as well. It's called Science and Philosophy in the Indian Buddhist Classics. I think it's available around here. That comes in different volumes, and we are now looking at the second volume, and so the Tibetan text starts with, they both start at with Leo Kaiser.
Liu Gupa.
With the 9th chapter.
Inayan Tanda Gengia Son Tanda Liu Gupa, the Sharamombo Marangazo, Tizo the Dawson Lachi or Sonsa, Nel Liu. Trupa na Dumba ta Jepa no same control on the Somata contact of Chimoto Cheshos, the Sonsa Teringazo Tom Shiba's setting what church in Gots in Indovia.
And so mainly what this particular second volume is about the mind. And this 9th chapter that will be touched on quite extensively apparently. But it's in itself it's quite short. But so Geshe-la, as kind of like an introduction to it, teaches on the second chapter, 2 chapters that go before, which all deal with the mind.
So, then so Nachu Nonima Chonyaga, Lozeata, Shipazeata, Rupazeata, and Yo Saritanding so Lake Poshimari, Tuni Chicheshiki, Buddhizeata, Janazeata, Buddhazeata, and Yore, Lotan, Shipatan, Rupajaga Kekan, Koso Chichin and Shiki.
There are these terms in Tibet, in English, they are cognition, consciousness, and awareness, and they in Sanskrit, cognition translates as is the word for buddhi, you might be familiar, right? Buddhi, and then samviti then is translated here as awareness, and then we have jnana. For consciousness. Yeah.
Pena rikpa zeato logan senye jao lo zena karzena rikpa segres shipa zena karzena sarjan rikpa sarjan rikpa le shipa chakor ko chanson
this go Tommy Kaiser so she how come lorik
ta tombo tandri chen kami lo zena karze goreziti rikpa le chakres Shipa zena karze was the surgeon palleres the shitata chason.
Cognition is here it is then explained further. Cognition is stated to be awareness, and then the nature of consciousness is said to be clear or luminous.
No, tangazo lozeat kar mi tatan kar rezina ko yer jpichani mi tatakor yul ton de go sa jpa la ora jpa ziti yer ton de go sa loze ores.
Cognition is that which Rigpa knows its object.
Alors ça Jean Jpa zi on dit concept continent tenji Geshe gamdu koro ngota saborela leka chiate yer ton ya tres ni kechute ni gersha.
So it's often consciousness or the mind is often defined as to be clear and knowing, and clear is describing the nature of the mind, and knowing is about the function.
No, teni tangatso tsama ngatso saulo ta yo pa tangatso tsama hako gore lo zia chi yo pa ta hako yore ta te pa tsona zigchan ji reta zigcha main ba ji re zena ta te son tser ki chena zigchan ji re la wo sar ina ta na bi chu na chen te zigcha main ba ji re la wo.
So and then from the Buddhist point of view, when we describe the mind, it's something non-material, right? Not physical, which is very different from the explanation that the scientists give, right? The scientist is it's very well is a function of the brain, right? It's rather physical.
Sonza tanda sarjan rikpa ze sarva ti ngatso zikcha maimbi koro saryu chi sonza ni sarwa ni konsan chokon reshe chikton yang tanda ko melon na jeng pasho ko yer tsama korolin char yong sonsa ne sarbazi ni reshe ni patni gyamdu.
So the way Isolus explains this, being clear in nature. So one is that it can be interpreted to mean that it's non-physical, not non-matter, immaterial, but it can also mean that it is reflecting things, that things appear in the mind, just like things appear in a mirror or are reflected in a mirror.
Tani resha samba de karya oreziti ta te chulik tan ja ke dan de nambi serik ze go sa chulik ke cha chi me pala mi sama li yo atri ta samba de karzena tani cha so nyom mong chama kuma ku reshe de ja ore aso sem ze at thoma me pani sama chang ra wo chi res yana yang te nyom bi chama pa ki yo son sa ranjin de sabore tan chama de lower le pangu son sa sem le cha so nyom mong kyon de pièce. And then the
third way in which this being clear in nature is explained is that although we have all these afflictions in our minds, right? Attachment, anger, ignorance, and so forth, from time without beginning, but they are just adventitious. They're in the mind. The mind is kind of sullied by the afflictions, but it's not an integral part of the mind. They're not an inherent part of the mind, and that means they can be removed, and that's what the third way refers to, in which the clear aspect or the clear nature can be explained.
Korongo ta sapos yer kazik tsama kole charto sa ngaso sauno tan tsama topsa yer ton deni yana yang zikchan tenji mayimba Aparte yon tel gander tena yari ndronita na chu shia na je sangye azana te so nyomon pa tsama ta kachari tawshi yo sa tsama go yamne che sa je sanje to lo ngoni jo yore dixare.
Yeah, so you talk your
Pa yer tonto wore tsel sharsa zikshar de gore yana koro zikchen ni pare I gonle
so in other words things like physical anything really anything can appear to the mind. We can know things, physical things and so many other things, but it doesn't mean that the mind itself is a physical thing. It's matter.
Chunsa so nanchu nal don comes in comes in comes some sheni zimen kam lia son di samlo chu ma to je zipon ro tan di chuni me patni she yon son za namshi zet peti zipon katar nin ro ayo patni shakore.
Okay, and then we all in di ngunla di nyumong me pazoya ki
she sama
di lapma song di nyumong me pazoya la sangye sa
sa tanda same the ranger sabo yin son za nyomon de tsol ne kable kul chama chana jen ka tndi she wore ni ta nga so nyamlen chini gyandar chini androna tamal chama me pari ti tsama tsang gyang chang ro yo re sangji sal yan ro yarin ro yo ke chetiri.
Yeah. And so as mentioned before, the afflictions that we have since time without beginning, they are not an integral part, an inherent part of the mind, and which means they can be removed, and so we can train our minds and then improve in a sense, and then thereby gradually achieve the state of Buddhahood. And then Geshe was saying that in Buddhism, we speak of different realms of existence. Yeah, we speak of the desire realm, and then the form realm, and the formless realm. And in the formless realm, the beings apparently they don't have a gross physical body that we have. The Zukmegam.
Supporting me. That is not tapping knowledge in a long time what you say. Shen non should some tell us Jamba Chikan Yoma resident. That is not typical Remondoshon is actually many Shipachipo de Toachi.
So then we have different explanations from the Sutra point of view. They say these beings in the formless realm, they literally have no body at all. Whereas then, from the tantric point of view, it's explained that there's a wind, which is matter, which is said to be physical. They say that mind goes together with the wind, so they not just only have the mind, but there's a wind element, as it were, with together. So yeah.
Rasa tani tseri gyanye tsu ta shengdu ta te sa nanchu ta tseri ni ke parula. Nika saulo taya ndi nan shia manchen bochi rancho gore ta tseri ke chena ta te so zigla kachar tam me pan ro chi ro ta kinaj la pa ta ta so chelin ro chi ma to shipa ta zig me pa tani chi jakomandu la ndu jen chi pan ro re la tseri pa ta duryona.
If one compares the Buddhist perspective on the mind and then the scientific way of explaining the mind, then a great difference obviously is that the scientists assert that the mind is function of the brain, it's physical, but otherwise we find many similarities as well.
Tanda samlo ze de at zigl kachar ninjoa yomet ke don nachul chena nenga chemo ngoni retil kachar ndroa me pa circuisia najinan nachu ze at yon koron yo mar kia ngachu koron yo mar zu ponji wata namshi jig ndrogo re namshi jig sona tani ki achman ndro ni mar namba chena namshi ze at sindi zu pon le kachar ninjoa yo pa ke len sonda kia ngachu jasa ke chashi sa ngoma jasa yon samlo ndel tu teore.
And as the scientists assert that the mind is connected very strongly with the body and it's a function of the brain, they don't have that notion as Buddhists do, that there is a separation at death of the body and mind, and that the mind basically continues on to future life, and that's the very basis of asserting the whole idea of reincarnation, rebirth, but that's obviously not accepted by the scientists.
Notini ta jimanga sorlo sem chara ka Geshe satian shipandere latan den shipandi kortala nanchu nal shipa kola yo mombo chi sheore lor dunze andro lor sumze andro lor nil mandra mombo shia tendri yore sonzang tan zinda kale chini so re ngotro chini ndogoya lo rudun ro.
Yeah. And then, it's a vast topic, the teachings on and explanations of the mind. And there are, different resources and different explanations and divisions. And we find a division, for example, into 7 different aspects, as it were, of the mind, or types of mind. And then we have a division into 3 types and then into 2 types. And Geshe is going to start with this 7-fold division of the mind.
So then, Namshital Aya Mandra, Tapsanlo tel Simdel Zegora, Simze or Shibatel Aya Mandra, Dunshia Telkazze or Monsum Zeas, Jipazea, Geshe, Yerkyo, Nalamang, Tetsum, Loshizini, they said Dunchi Gore, purchase Aulo Tantans on my antinal Shundundu Gore.
So the way they're enumerated here in the text, the first one they say is a direct perception, and then we have inference or inferential cognizers. Subsequent cognition is the third one. The fourth one is a correct assumption, and the fifth one is indeterminate perception or there are different ways of translating them. So in the text we have indeterminate perception. Another way to translate it is non-discerning direct perception. And then the 6th one is doubt. And the last one, the 7th, is distorted cognition, or I find also wrong consciousness, wrong cognition.
Rixon. Sonsa, that Soundlo Mandrava Dunshini, Dung Tombo Tel Monsum Zeni, Yaro, Monsum del Ketchuni Sangore, Kotoba Mayim Bajita, Yerton Trishi Mayim, Manchavachi, the Ketchuni Sansatel, Monsum Zeni Tani Yagore. Toba Mayimba.
Yeah.
Ani Mantra Yerton Tons on the Mantra, Tanichi Gore.
So, what direct perception is concerned, it's always a non-conceptual consciousness, and it needs to be unmistaken.
Watani ta til kandi stopa mayimba zeti akarwar zeti ngaso nabje topa ta tome ki chapar kandi chegore zeti ngaso yerle saulo tayon di pena ngandro ndri de on di muk kamba di nal tayon di kamba di nal chala karyo na ngeta gosat yinare tando sat yinare tamundo saina tsama ni mugli sharyon gore tel ngos tanda tome ze gore tome ze ati yer kts namba te tongu tsama toyon te mayimba nge Tarimbo chigla saulo tong dingaro saulo tang the country in that titulo ila shagre mung tiwol sama shartog mari til tokpa ze ore tini chabar cheto sare dishi japto do
so yuki nampa shagi re di kase top mere
no tokpa re tang
so pa tagore ta dugu re dene tokparo
re tini lapto sa tang so top tome ze deat yerk Samats Koruts number 10 Matsoli Sharing or Mato, Patsikanjo Goma, Topaziati Saulo, Patsia Mato, Yerlets number Shago Mari.
Yeah. So the difference between a conceptual and a non-conceptual consciousness would be, say, if you look around in this room, there are different objects, say, hanging on the wall, and there are certain aspects that are being say reflected for example, or that appear certain aspects of these objects that appear to our eyes. That would be a non-conceptual consciousness. But the moment we think about things, I want to look at something, or all these conceptual thoughts and ideas, that would be a conceptual consciousness.
Tome telangaso mushi nashi cheshi lishi zeni tombo ngat te rache sawar pena mushi zina muku pasho kozikta tonsa chigle mena ngin tongo mari diawlo kodan tongo mari dai na dat amcholo manche part tongo mari ani recha ina zupol tu maso na recha te nyongo mari ani troa che gnwa cheshi ina chel tu maso part nyongo mari to so tsama tu gwa yer ton cheni ke gwa tsama tel Tomeki Shipase or Tobazia de Tinjigo Mari, Tarimbochi, Dandrichi Chakayores and Saulo Town and Jikore, Lazin the Yores and Saulo Town and Jikore. So yearly tune in Chemogoni Hako, they need to so Topalati.
Yeah. So basically, we can say that non-conceptual consciousnesses are all the sense consciousnesses, things that we directly, when our senses directly kind of meet with an object. Yeah, either we directly see something, or we directly hear a sound, we smell something, or taste something. We have this physical, tactile sensations. These are, when an object meets with a sense faculty, basically, these are all non-conceptual consciousnesses. But then, when we reflect on certain things where we don't necessarily hear or see immediately, we can think about the past or imagine something, in the future, whatnot. Then these are all conceptual consciousnesses.
So, Tenital, the Yevan Rawota, Natsunachu knowledge, Monsum the Latanda, Tendombo Monsum the Mandrava Genrichi Chendu, Wambu Mosum, Yiki Mosum. Rangrig Mosum, Namjo Mosum, and General what you do.
We have, then within the direct valid perception or perceivers or direct perception, there's again a subdivision. There is a sense direct perception, mental direct perception, self-cognizant direct perception, and yogic direct perception.
Then, Tanda Wambu Mosum said that Natsongonzali Lauri Mukazing Tonja, Navaga Jani, Shega Romyon, Liga Chamyonja, and his Nagatatsoria, Ternatala, Wambu Mosum Nazegre.
And so there are five direct sense direct perceptions. As mentioned before, when we perceive things with our five senses, like the eye sense, ear sense, and so forth.
Then, Rangrig Mosum Ziachi Jacayore, National Tranta non-pens and Gajamaja Chering to Tandandi Kavrina Jani and Ori. Rangrig Mosum Ziatan, so Samlo Chitan de Ori, Samlo Yerla Patan de Nit Samashi de Orita, Samlo Koroshinge can reach your resit in Nalo Yanjo, Samlo Latani, Samlo Shipal Tani, Shipachi or Rezeori. Non Shu Shetanchi Reta to Truntagas, tell Rangrig Mosum Zenishati. Now Lul Tanich. Coson Rantroson.
Toma.
Natso Tanda Mushita to Lon Tongo Yoma Rezuma Tongo. Tau Lon Tony, the young Lochi or Rezenalo, Bull, Lol Tadini. Shibashi Jacori, Tati, Kelly, the Merlin, Rangrig Mosum Zedi at the Laur. There's a possum.
Yeah.
Korokoro Shiba Korokoronton.
Yeah. So then we have the self-cognizer or the self-cognizant direct perception. That's accepted within Buddhism in certain schools. Not all of them, all of the tenet systems or all of the Buddhist schools, they accept the self-cognizers. But some do, and they say there's something in the mind that can know, or part of the mind that knows itself.
So, Tini, Namjo Mosum Theatre, Namjo Mosum Theatre, Tanyavlin Bachik Keshari, Nyavlin Bachik Gumta Sojavia, Nyavlin Tombochi on Dini, Tandandavakoro, Tandazita Manchesa, Satombachil Dejin, and Zambuli Jamba to Solcario at Nasu Mukatana, Toyatini Chai or Reservoir, what a sort of Antomboyali on the Tutul Namjo Mosums in Tanya Javori, Nyavlin Bachik Keshari.
Yeah, and then we have the yogic direct perception. This is, then in relation to, practitioners who are on a high level, who have gained, certain realizations, and they, with their mental abilities, are, able to, even though they don't see something directly with their eyes, they have this ability to see places far away, for example.
Tamatela, Natsota, the washing a mine beat, and Natso with Yelangosum to your reze de wore. Tate, Kalikabonda, Shuchi, Zina, Hamokoni, Giana, Topa Chandroniana, one more Chandroni, Mugatiparu, Lungosum to Jambachi, Yiki Mosum Zachi, your mesit, Titi, your resini national, Chantamombo Chikishenduta, Thank you, Chantachi Law on the shore, Topa Taran was some resini, thank you, Topa and was a real lavjare, Tematogen. Most of Jamba the test and she gave Nachu Corona and she Kali Kapochi Gavja or attended the Jim. So,
Yiki Wang Castle, Nunsum dear Castle, Umatega look topa Rangrig segro. Ani shamba this.
Ngosam ko chang tokpa tara re la gre ma to jamba to so kali ka pon chi ja ja tate shuchi desi ka pon.
So and then we have the mental direct perceiver. And what this is concerned, apparently there are differences in these different tenet systems. They have different assertions. What the highest school is concerned, the Prasangika Madhyamika, they say the mental direct perceiver is a conceptual consciousness. That's fairly easy and straightforward. Whereas the other tenet systems, they have other ideas. And they're quite complex, and I'm not going to explain them any further.
Tendi tate indi ngosam ze de at nga so tendi chiglang ngonze che de ore parche tigun rikere ta nga so pen rawo ne ta ki ja so mu ke zing tong an rawo ta gom jam ni tendi nyaw ni chen rawo ta ni shipa koro koro tong de ni rawo pen rawo ne so re tendi do chin sa rawo.
Yeah, so but this is basically let's say most important things to say at the moment here about what the sense direct perceivers and the mental direct perceivers and the self-cognizing direct perceivers and the yogic direct perceivers are concerned. Just to recap, so the direct sense perceivers were, when we see, or perceive things with our see or hear or taste objects with our senses, and then we have the mental direct perceivers that what the highest school is concerned, they say is a conceptual consciousness, and then the self-cognizers that we talked about, that there is a part of the mind that is able to know itself, and then the last one, the yogic direct perceivers or perception, is that on a high level of what practitioners are concerned when they are able to have this abilities to see things at a distance.
So tene ni pa jipa lan de shi chi gyawra jipa ze de at nga so musu che ka man thon ni ta puki yemai ta chia pen rawo chin de ja na nga so puki ri gyawlia to ayon de gon a so samlo chi tan di gyawlo le me ti yo at ha kon ro ani ta ta wala te ni man ti gyawlo le me yo pa ha ko ya tinji chi le jipa la de gore.
And then next, within this sevenfold division of the mind, we have the inferential cognizers. And it's about inference by, for example, an example that was always given, or often given, is that we, if you see smoke somewhere, say on the mountain, we can infer that there is a fire, even though we don't see the fire directly, but we can infer that there is a fire burning.
No telu mo sam rega yo mar ko jawlo ko to ata ta so me ta so choni thon yo mar ta ko jimse tel te sang ne te treng yo sacha ze ya te ni chin thong map yo sacha langon de ni nga so choni ro ma nyon chi ti na chi te kilometer ka se yo me ta lam khu chok ka se yo me sama ta tel chi ta ni nga so lo o te ni chi yo sa ri shan ro ndo sacha te ina sacha mi koran thon yo ma ta nga choni ro nyon mar ta te ri sacha ge jimse la te ni lam shi ya te so le ji pa jang nan ri sa re sam ma so shin ro ya chin do.
Yeah, so inferential cognizers are not direct perceptions, but then one applies reasoning, say, because of the smoke there, it's obvious that there must be a fire. Or to give another example, if we have a look at a map of a place we have never been before, but we can still nevertheless get an idea of a place, how it may be or may look like in reality. So that's also referring to a map. Then by inference we can understand what the place is roughly like.
Tatini she parze at rangstand ki ta yanta chi se gore na ta yanta ze ko ati jimse yanta chi ta gore ta yo gajinga shi jimse ta na te ni tanji khako ya ayo me yo ta te so kha counter ti jimse de yanta tra me pa chi te ni tane yo ki khako ya o ta te ji pare je patal ta ayo at jam ko in sero ma jan ndik sero tani to sham.
But so inference needs a correct reason. It's something based on reasoning, but it has to be a valid or correct reason.
Pena ko to ayong du samni to mai ni mupan ro chi na ko jimsen de nor saro tendrile ji pa ke ma
kasa duwa yure
ne to buki to ayong du to jalo me yo sare samra ton le to mai ni mupa ji de riona churina ko jalo me yo me ha ko ma te su ji pa chak mare
mupa
to answer ni
if someone, for example, is mistaken, they don't see or they don't realize that there's smoke, but they think it's mist, fog, then there's a mistake there. Just yeah.
어떤지 지파 자요 말다 파치 모섬다 지파니 드니 드치 자나 다 도켄지 자요 사리 지파제야티 gem센질 테니 든지 사로 탄데니 지 모섬제야티 파 yerlen 초고 니르삼 단다니 닌로자라
Ngensum kasa?
모섬 다지
야.
동보데 yerlen 체 yerten chena 마토시 하코니 지 마리 지파제야티 gem센 테니 사로 탄 지파간가 똑바리다 기 똑방어 쪼치아요.
So all the inferential cognizers are necessarily a conceptual consciousness, and as just mentioned earlier, it has to do with applying reasoning and then applying inference to get to know something. Whereas the direct valid cognition is where we perceive, where the senses directly meet an object, and as we said, yeah.
Las otniri tadani samba Geshe tes lila pore Geshe ze de atanda ngosum da jipani ka thoma toni ti te nipa ma to de atal Geshe la de penanga so darabsala tombole ti ko tombole atal chema la re ti jima nipa te so hakoti ko sama shiki ore te so Geshe ze ore Geshe ze at tombo toyatal chama ze at jani ta chama ze at lori ni gnal ja nipa nal tanda dung gnal chama ze chi yoma jima lori ni ze ti chama ta chama ze chama main ke gati jima shi de ya chama tal Geshe ze de gore atso yanjo shi ya chi yo te lila pondo ore Geshe
Lila ore.
yanjo shi ya tal Geshe la de
So such a tambula dori
tombo tobi kable chema yanjo thong de ti tel Geshe la ore te lila pondo ore.
Okay, so then as the third one among these sevenfold division, it's subsequent cognition, and that, for example, when we go to a place for the very first time, we see a place for the very first time, that's a valid cognition, but then each time we go back, to somewhere we have been before, that would be, and see that place, for example, that would be an example of a subsequent cognition.
Tati sacha chigen go mai na so tombo tgati ko ngo shinro ti chama sha kore ti yanjo ti na Geshe re tela yanjo tong sam lo tel ze or ta yang lo tel yanjo shi lo tel Geshe la or ta da chama shi pa chang ro
Yeah. The same would apply if we meet someone for the very first time. That would be a valid cognition. And then, but then subsequent times that we meet another person, that would be, I mean,
tanda chama shi pa re ze Geshe ze at shi pa re shi pa ja re
it's still, of course, all talking about the mind. But you had a question.
Could we say that it's like assumptions that we make because we already know or we already saw that thing? I don't know, just to better understand. Can we say like they are assumptions that we make?
I think there's a I will. Kasa is kongi tiwa kari sena kanes la pure. Kasi mi shamba chik teng nipa sumbala saba tukdu. I don't know how to say this, to explain this. But I mean,
like if we already have created an image of that in the mind, and then we rely on the image and not on the real. I don't know. Like I'm just trying to understand, because he mentioned like valid cognition the first time. So what is the difference between the two? Like
yeah, teng tambo tukdu sema ro.
ko shin ke lo ngo shin do ro
Ani teng nipa sumbala saba di Geshe ro.
Geshe ro
Ani di kepa sepo kare res.
ko ketan log par le ndamanda chi she de ore mong ko ni shira nenga chi o mari tombo tonke tel chama ni pa tonke tel Geshe samba je pa ka te ton Geshe zini mi mndawa chi tar kari sarto yi mong ka par chama ze ati ketan ja ga kanal parmana zini le de o sa tombo jawa ta yersu jawa tel choni no chu no chi ka par chi chen du mong shira nenga shira yo mari kanta tombo tonke tel chama lagre yanjo tonke chama Geshe
Also kepa shira mindu.
Shira nenga chenbochi shira yo mari na ta national tema ta Geshe zini tanya ta uchi le de ndo. Sonsa kanta tombo toni ta chama tani ni pa samba ka che tona Geshe yamba ha ko sona tani jikndo. Jima non te leon de on de jila wore san ha konro.
I mean, these terms apparently come up quite a lot: valid cognition, or valid cognizers, and then subsequent cognizers. But I mean, the main difference is really seeing or perceiving something for the first time, which is valid, which is a valid cognition, and then all the subsequent moments or times are subsequent cognizers. That's there's not a huge difference, but that's basically it. Seeing something or perceiving something for the first time is valid cognition, and then all the subsequent moments or times
are called subsequent.
If we can say that when we subsequently perceive it, then we have that image of the first time, which makes the difference.
Okay.
I guess so. What I'm understanding, that which makes the difference.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
It's not so important, but it just, these terms come up a lot again and again.
Tatachi soso hamako and titiri ze penandi chichi rezeni penangatsu lanka chilangatsu rosa shingi yomari ina dini pandroya rezeni ni hamba jamni shindondo chini dini pandroya droya on the nunch tol koro hamako ni hamba javjari ta tol ndroya chi ina tendi samlo tel yekyo lawori John Drogo Tonchin Rosa Langa Shigio Mari Shingio Hamba Jan Otenin Joya Rezi Jima Tata Redeona Yakure.
Okay, so now we come to the fourth one out of these seven, which in English are called correctly assuming consciousnesses, or correct assumption. There's a term, correct assumption. That's, for example, if one were to wander about and then one would some people might approach one about the direction of a certain place, and then even though one does not know the right way, one just pretends to know and then says, oh, it's this way to the right. And then at the end of the day, although one doesn't know it, but it turns out to be correct, then that would be this correctly assuming consciousness or correct assumption.
Or the courage Hakugo carry or is she Jimsen Rochi Saulo Tonari, Jimsen the Nurjochi Saulo Tonari, Hamba Jaina, Ricarina, Hamba Jani Landro, you at the sound of the Recast, Nursona, Loshiziati, Womatin Almandro, Yakyo Chahamari, Hamba Jani, Pinipandro, Resin, Shishini, Tinichin, Noriona, the Loshiziati in Almandro Chakri. And that the Tata Ren Radio Palangaro Hamba Rain Yora, what the Yakyola they were.
Yeah, so correctly assuming consciousness is when one is maybe, in a sense, overly confident about something. One is not, but one just pretends to know something, but one doesn't know it really, and then says something or explains something, and that turns out to be correct. Then that's a correctly assuming consciousness. If it turns out to be wrong, that's a wrong consciousness.
Last one, Tani Tendrijic Pachi, Tendrijic Jan and Xereni, Nala Mangizia, that's in the carbon that you relate. Natsuchi similar Chichardi in Tatan Denichi Imbat Hamoko and Chile, Nakinatsu Kenson Androti, Mirobaji teaching lab dating, each code and takes a Kekar lab songs, I'll check on Cham, many Trimombo in Chegno, or Telenalama, Rungaji, around the Savana, telling Nipan Gemini Jima, Carlab songs, check on Cham, many Chiglan, the lab songs also. Watching Dro teaching Tom, matching Dro, Suris, Tijima, teaching Ton Tony, saying Kuni Hamako, Mushit and Alamang each other. And it darling Yankee Nayo Tarare, Chishen, she there, turned out the Karshia, Chakahamuko, the national among each other. What Nala Mang is there, then the Chijakore, Nala Mangila Tachi, gone shaping Monsum Ingor, Monsum Gicheshi Ingor, Tombot Ingor. Mungatobal Nala Mang is there, Mary.
So, Tomikishipa Ingor. So then we come to the fifth one out of the seven. It's an indeterminate perception, or in another translation, non-discerning direct perception. So that's when we, for example, are concentrating on something, but at the same time there's some sound there, we kind of like, we hear it, there's this perception there, but we don't realize it, or ascertain, we don't become aware of it. Or we see a person or see people walking by, I mean, with our eyes, but we don't really pay attention, they disappear to the eyes. And then later on, if someone asks us, who was that person, we can't say, we can't give the answer, because it appears to the mind, but it's not ascertained, or, we don't become aware of it. And that indeterminate perception is always a direct perception and non-conceptual.
Laso tini tichire nala mangi tini do chire te ngosam de imbachi tini tesom zediata ta navjinga suchen sonal mombo yungra te yena manna samba tela tesom rasam jo kashi inke chile te ingi parche ingire sam ta parche ingi maris ta yena mai sa ta ta ro tesom za tokpa za de ni samlo tela tesom la wor ta de lilarin do.
And then the sixth one is doubt. That's fairly easy to understand. Yeah, we can be in doubt about something, then either thinking that, oh yeah, it might be this in this case, or we think, oh, it's rather not like this, or we can be rather neutral but still uncertain about something. That's basically what doubt is about.
Tani tesomre tani tamata loshi ta ten non-nutrition you samlo samala loshi lab de or penange Tsenjatandri Jandu, ta Kanrak Mombonton, Kashi Muli Chunjini, Kanral Taikas, Kanrak Mombonton, Tindrish Chongres, Kanrak Mombo Mari, Kanrak Carboy, Sonsa Kotil, Navjan Tindri, Katolan and Raw Tindrishakan, Nato Dawa Taika, Mugla Tindrich and the Dawa Ninton, the Changal and Raw, the Sotama Loshirita, non-trisho, Samlo Sama Loshila. And mind catching Samlo Tanjana.
Yeah, and then the last one, the seventh out of in this division, is wrong consciousness. And to give an example, that could be, for example, due to a fault in the eye, one perceives snow mountains as blue. It's an example that comes up a lot. Due to a fault in the eye, we have a wrong visual perception, seeing the white snow mountains as blue. Or if we, on a full moon day, we kind of pinch or whatever our eyes, we see double. We see a double moon. That would be a wrong consciousness.
Non la sotini ci na tsunabje pechat so nan senje de topan ro ta tel topa yo chon ripongo la rachi yore sani saulo tandina ten non cheze pet sotini ja tanda kan ngombo ze an ro ta dawa ni na yo wa shi ze ta ni ka wa shi ri muk tonton ra ta saulo ta tonde chi na ripongo la rachi yore sani saulo tandina non cheze go o te topa ta tome ki shi pandra mandra sama yore tanda lo shi de la.
So wrong consciousness can be either non-conceptual or conceptual. It can be both. And so, as just mentioned, it can be, visually, having a wrong perception as, seeing the snow mountains as blue, or seeing two moons. But it can also be refer to wrong ways of thinking. And again, something that comes up in the text a lot. Thinking that a rabbit, has, horns, or taking for granted that, there are horns of a rabbit. That would be obviously a wrong consciousness as well.
Then also chural ro kablu to sol tochon ro pena so dawan zimbi mukshi ti dawan tongo yore and tongo yo mare tindri ngaso chuchu ngangaron ro chuchu indi dawat tali chin ro ndini chumundo mundu samsong ya tati date san serke taon di dawa ze ate chimbon zabuli tombo chultan tombo chingri chi yore ze wora zambuling chikchachich ta chimbo shuchi yore ze wora antanga son thoyal dawat chunchu tali chingri chi derman repellent and chimachin tongo yo mare te dawat nga son tongo yo mare ze mushi tantra yore tantra yo mare tindi ya topa chi andu te kale ka ponro
Geshe di ngoma den sa
chira na ta se tangare tengo ni tongo yo na me na so so sound kandi
Geshe, for example, says when he was younger and still in the monastery debating, and on the debate ground, they were engaged in their discussions, and it was about the moon, and the only thing that we can see with our eyes is this small, kind of fairly small, seemingly moon in the sky, and but obviously, thinking that it's that size only, like a plate or something, is a wrong consciousness. In reality, it's obviously quite huge.
Tate non-Discerning nga so da manthonze gona kalika pore tani tse on dinga so there's a tarimbo chi chala ta tangdan chil tenin ta tomandrawa chin tongdo tete so sama non-Discerning non-Discerning mare zena ne yang tani chuchu ma to semle yang kor gamandu lan to yang to gamandu ta te so ta chopa sheshi mundu ta sange Geshe.
It's going to just Dawa so.
Tani min China tarimbo chin di chunju chingmang tongdo tse tse le chiri ndo ni chile di moja ina tarimbo yon di chuchu chingmang tongdo tse chile di chembo chan ya pa song di chori ndo chan the son char de yore yo mare ta te so ke pa chen ro chire ma to ngoni na char yo mare ta la go sar ina cancer na chindu
in truth dann die
yenda in samare Trashi in Samare.
In Samare?
In Samare. Without under Chire, there was a retain on Trashi in that is on Trashina, Taman Trashi, and you shall know what a kill.
Can't that chicken, Chimchure, can that Chamber Chash that did Trashi Marbe?
They say me longer, let's say on the Tarimbo on the Chichu Maton Tongo.
Yeah, in a meat Chunching in Mari. In a meat is 4 Chunchum Mare.
Oh, that Chiba Chicken Rita Kot
Chunchus Nangi in Chunchum.
Marwa. What says the Tito Topache and Lucy?
Geshe talks about another example. When we see a person coming from a far distance, they appear small, right? And then they come close, and then they, seem to become bigger, and then they go away, and then they turn to seem to be becoming smaller again. But I had this doubt whether is it now a wrong consciousness or not.
Yenamana Tatri now get the Kepache and Dutande, Lori Dunda Tendri, Sound Low Tanton, this was some other young Churana Regina, Muslim Merjan Gawa to choose any condition. Gashingashi Pena Mosum the town, Nala Mangi till Muslims, Nala Mangi Tama Mosum Yare de Orita, Mosum Sama Nala Mangi Mare de Omari, Tambo the town Nabatini.
Kare Musumre?
Musumre. Yatamare deore, mare deo mare. Ni Pena Mosum Yinke Nalamangi Mainke Condeora. Are. Mosum Yini, Nalamangi Maini Momboyore. Nalamangi Mosum Mainke Yomare. The Nidamanda Sia Yori. Tati Shoshin Chishet and Chachin Rogo Samare. Are.
Anyway, when they go, when they debate about all these things, oftentimes they discuss, two of these. For example, I mean, it can be anything, any two things. But here, for example, they might discuss, about the relationship between direct perception and what was the other one? Indeterminate perception. So, are they same? Are they contradictory? Are there, how many possibilities are there in between? And it seems to be that there are three possibilities in between direct perception and indeterminate perception. Musumira. Ngensumina?
Ngosum Nalamagi and Ngosa Yimbi Yakavri. Ngosa Nalamagi Yimbi Kavmaro.
Okay, so Ngensumina Casa Nalamangi Nepa Yimpe Kyap.
Kaumari.
Kapemari. Okay.
Nalamangi. Nalamangi Tamang was some rate. They love Jotan. Nalamangi Tamang was
Yimpe Kyap. Okay, so okay.
Sama Nalamangi Mari.
Okay, so but anyway, I mean, one could say that whatever is the direct perception is not necessarily an indeterminate perception. But whatever is an indeterminate perception is necessarily a direct perception.
So, Nambi Semka Rupaze Goyaka resident, Tanda Loridan Naso Geshe Gaya Dunda. Naso Mikatan and Yavlin the Chuta killing and milling Sama, Gela Naja Gent the Kinson on Lyon de Akanyari. Roa, Matote Yavlin Bata Tombota Chinon Chulish Ranjachi or Maritandi. Semka Rupanya Chenget so on the Sama Yavichi on the Tata, so Gela the Sound of the Leon Gore, taking the concentrate on non-discerning come with Seri Lavando, Tarnia Jaguaya, Nengo Terry.
Yeah, she's a Nampayina Mina, Nampayina.
Some Gilan, so younger watch, so Saul attacking us on Jishia, the Samangas on Abji, then Saulo Tanda Rendo and some Saul, Tetum Zadi or in some Saul, non Tishore de or in some Saul, Jim Salatini Hako, some Saul Musa Hako de or, some Saul Hamba Jauri, what is she or it? That's Uti.
But anyway, so in essence, this now what we have covered today about the sevenfold presentation of the mind or division of the mind. I mean, it's something that relates to anybody really, whether whether one is a Buddhist or not, whether one is practicing or not. We all have a mind, right? And we all have doubts. We all have we sometimes make mistakes, or we infer something, or whatever. So it applies to all of us.
Last, Tendi, Tateri Lori didn't the Naso Geshe Shap Chindros on the Parche Jean and Rixareni, Kama Chikaching, the Chosa Travanda, Yonet, Kama Chikal and Naso Challenge.
But yeah, so that was for today, the sevenfold division of the mind. I would like to leave it at that, but we have 10 minutes left. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. Are there any questions online?
Kamachunji Matalamas, Nagi Kamachona Challenge Sakora. Chiche, Chuandu.
No question.
I have a question. So, for example, the assumption. Here, the division is correct assumption, right? So, if the assumption is wrong, then it would be distorted cognition.
Yes, distorted cognition. Yes.
And if it's correct, then it's the correct assumption.
Yes. That's how the Geshe explained it before. That's Kaisa. Yichu, Hampa Kegi, Lamka Pacho Urene, that's how we are in a Tamatama Tenden Diro. Yichu, in a di no Waina, Loshi, Loshi.
Kohakoyona, Yana, Hakoyona, Yakyo Chakamari, Tombokoni Hakoni Langa, Shini Chicken, the Ninja Resini Chindona, the Geshe. Geshe, the Tachi Kene Nishitaro. Langa Hakoyoni and then Joe Resina Geshe. Hamakoni Hambajani Tata Resona Yakure, Hamakoni non-trishore sona Loshi.
Okay, yeah, so if someone doesn't know, the correct way, but just pretends it, to be there, and then it turns out to be correct. It's a correctly assuming consciousness. If it turns out to be not correct, it's a wrong consciousness, or as it is here translated as distorted cognition. So that's when the person does not know. But if the person does know, and then if the person knows it, then it's the third one, the subsequent cognizer. Subsequent
Nazo telegiarni chindro darwa. Nazo yuki jogandrogo and the Yachita on the Langa Shaja, Yam Tonsachi. Tanga Kunin Toyomata, Kumusum Galam the Shitari, Shiba Tombo Mosamare.
Yeah. So if we're going into the mountains for a walk where we have never been before, and we see a path just there, we're going up. So we go there and see that for the first time. That would be direct valid perception.
Nipa the carresness, Tangan Dronyo yo Marta, Satan Rochil Tandrosa Tatashina Jipari.
Yeah, and then then we have the inference or inferential cognizer. So then when we go to a place where we have not been before, but where we have had a look on the map, what Geshe said before, that would be an inference.
Tani Neman Dronyo Tata, not the enjoy raising a chinro grati, some low shinget Geshe.
Yeah, and then we have the subsequent cognizer or the subsequent cognition when we have been to a place before, and then we take people or friends or whatever to that place, and
Then ngema andronyo ma hako ma hamba jan tin enjoy resini chi enjoy ja tata resona yatyo chandore jepatre.
And then if you have not been, say, if you have not been to a place, but say, oh, this is the correct way, and it turns out to be correct, then it's correctly assuming consciousness.
Ta nala mangi to call tes jarka porita, Japan yori lamguti chikuliti ta kanro koina san in toa ya ingero and ma ingero sa topazani didinate, Jupate somre.
So what the non-discerning direct perception or the indeterminate perception is concerned is a bit difficult. So Geshe says then doubt is pretty easy. If you go somewhere, we are not sure, is it to the right, is it to the left, is it straight?
The Tetsomrita, last Lharo, that our pandros are chingro di non trisharsana, loshire. Lam chupoli garna pen chichana.
Yeah.
And the lamlan joya chupol pe garna, last three, as a top android is a chingro non trisharsana, loshire.
Yeah. And then the last one, the wrong consciousness, is when, when guide somewhere thinks it is straight on, but it turns out to be the wrong way. Then that's...
So that nala mangi the lamlan joyality, the jarkapon chindua. Jamba took the collegiata tata on the racer, not so lam chin joyal sound on the yarn.
So all these 6, other than the fifth one, the non-discerning direct perception or the indeterminate perception, all the others are pretty easy and straightforward to relate to that example of, finding a way.
Then it is.
I have a question.
Last.
For example, if someone is passing by and we are seeing it with our eyes, so that's an example of direct perception. But if someone is passing by and we are not paying attention, so we are not paying attention. So we didn't saw someone passing by who was passing by. We just know that someone passed by. So is that an example of indeterminate perception which you thought?
Yeah, but you look in that direction, right? In your second example,
we look in that direction, but we are not paying attention.
Yes.
So the difference between two perception is of attention. Is it?
Yeah. So kongi tiwa kaisana ngensumdang nanglamangi. Die so zu tonangchia ki kepayoro.
Nanglamangi.
Mi semba tong mi tongla ngensumro.
Tony Tata took not some lingy to a tested church current dozen or to knit and shazing, share you actually need to yona, want some shots at Tombong in Tonro.
You got to tonang,
don't not that don't not really don't not counter. Hako sona Tata, Hakoni Tesku, Kamani subsequent chicken on your Tata share you. Yona Congo some resar. That Ching Ton and Ton Teska Kamachin is cut to Trinaya Cochikashi Hakoma sons and Ton touching Ton Yoriana, I'm Chonal Konuko, they not among each other. Knowledging Ton Yori that Nini Kuni Yomar. And the Jew Ransa Sour now tell a Nipan Germany Baz in its any coral jar, Nipazeti Kuni Yomar.
So not to Kaisen, not to Tonanchi, Sam Nangla Kari,
Pena Temondro Yapo Chitavika, Amchol Taj, Ropa Chiglamna, 10 cents a teja. Using the Bala Hopper Chati Kirian Janza Mother, Amchokachikon did it, Chishi Tunicoma, what is I?
Timola,
Temon the Chilis, Temoya Pochi, Pitcher Hundred, Temoya Pochi, Tati Ropa Chishi, and Hamukoachi, what area?
Yeah, but it's correct. It has to do with this paying attention. Like what you say, if you see someone passing by and then you can tell you like a couple of minutes later who that was, that person, for example, how that person looked like, then that's that was a direct valid perception. And then, but if your eyes see, if something appears to your eyes, but later on you can't, you're distracted because you didn't pay attention, then that would be that the indeterminate perception. And then Geshe gave an other example. For example, so say one is watching a movie, one is fully immersed in that story, and then the friend might say something to one, but as one is fully immersed in that video or in that movie, whatever the friend says in the background is not ascertained.
Indeterminate.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a sound that the ears will hear in a sense, but it's not ascertained. It's
That's the thing. Get on the Nal concern chokundi nal tanda lo dund ma tranga chik jab sha ma to jib chande shemandu kenda ingin de ligu dumbari yan lor kashi nal de so dundul de she yapo tendi yo sa yore yan inji te so yi nal inji yo te ko so tato na lor dund ta tiringa son de she chi jawora
Die Pesha Shamala, Dorje.
then ta yo kere se ti nal mandu concern chokot inji nal gin yo da yo jira
Yeah, Chikpachi.
yana ta de shemandu concern chokot ma tranga chik yan
Okay. So Geshe says here in this text, these 7, are kind of basically just enumerated. There's not much of an explanation, but there are other texts in English, surely as well, where you can find more explanations on that.
Then you lor some the Landeshi to Chindu, and you lor ni chamber mombo, the son Reshi Gipandu, Asani 9 to Sola, Sanda Yoma, Nani, Nana Sotinima, Lorisum the Chindishi, Catani chamber mombo, she or Retani Mandeshi Yamindo and Drummond of the Shana.
Okay, so the next class will be on Thursday, same time, and then what follows below is these other divisions. Either one is to 3 types, and then the twofold division, and that's quite extensive. There are all these different groups of 2, but we'll look into that in the next class. Then we leave it at here. You might find it a bit strange or so, but it's actually quite an important aspect in Buddhist psychology, these explanations on the mind.
Last, thank you, Hindi